At the Halley Consulting Group, our hospital and health system clients frequently ask us, how should we use wRVUs as a tool in constructing compensation models? This question will be answered by Will Reiser, who is the Chief Information Officer at Halley Consulting Group. Will is also our content expert in the area of physician productivity compensation models. Let's hear from Will now.
We really do have a preference for Work RVU models, and we usually recommend that Work RVUs are the model that we put in place for physician compensation. They even work in a private practice setting. Now, in a hospital-owned practice setting, Work RVUs do have some significant advantages even over other models such as a bottom line model and so on. But like any tool, RVUs can be misused. And regardless of the model used, the following principles, I think, are particularly important in an employment situation. First, employed physicians should have a high degree of control over the measures that drive their compensation. And again, Work RVUs meet this requirement particularly well because even in an employment setting, the physician still has a lot of control over his or her personal productivity or style of practice and over the services that they provide and the procedure coding that supports those services and the documentation as well. The Work RVU model also tends to avoid some of the problems associated with employment, such as payer mix philosophy and central billing practices where the physicians may not control those elements. I think the second point is that it really is in the best interest of employed physicians and the hospital that the compensation per unit of production be sustainable over the long term. Otherwise, the practice loses money and consumes precious capital that would otherwise be used for the long-term success of the integrated organization. Sustainability is largely a function of the local practice volume and a well-managed cost structure rather than a pay rate determined using those national benchmarks, which may have nothing to do with that local reality. Just a quick side note, you've probably all noticed that the national surveys are currently experiencing a real fluctuation in some of the long-standing metrics as increasing numbers of physicians opt for employment. And so we need to be cautious that basing compensation on those fluctuating metrics can be a very risky process. The third point to make is that we recommend that our clients invest the time to understand the impact of a compensation model beyond the static illustration. All too often, hospital executives will structure a compensation with multiple tiers and thresholds based on a fixed point of productivity, and the math looks good for that one example that they've put together. But of course, the actual productivity will vary, and so it's absolutely critical to test the compensation structure using various scenarios and differing levels of productivity in order to see how it performs across the spectrum. I've often encountered models that were so broken that the practice lost substantial amounts of money on every additional patient visit that they happened to see simply because it had an unintended escalator up on the high end. And of course, you're not going to make up the losses in that type of a situation based on volume. The fourth point is that our preferred compensation approach includes a base pay component calculated as 50% of the prior year's actual Work RVUs multiplied by the rate per RVU for that physician's specialty. The other 50% of the physician's compensation is driven by the productivity component, which may include a clinical quality and service quality bonus component that's factored into that rate per RVU as well. And the fifth point to make is we recommend that productivity compensation be paid to the physician monthly rather than quarterly or annually. And this is a very important point because when you pay that compensation out monthly, the physician is always engaged and always receives that feedback on their level of current productivity. Our preferred model also uses a 3-month moving average to determine the productivity pay for the individual physicians. And it makes that payment usually on the second pay period of the following month. Again, so there's immediate feedback. That immediate feedback really does help to reinforce the productive behaviors, and it alerts the physicians when their productivity may be dropping.
Thank you, Will. For more information on how you can use Work RVUs in your physician compensation model to enhance physician productivity, please call us at 614-899-7325.